Alrighty, so this is a TV show I've been wanting to talk about for a couple weeks now. I wouldn't say it's necessarily new, considering it came out in 2016 and ended in 2022. And you'll have to excuse me. Didn't get much sleep last night, and it's like 8 o'clock. I am tired. But I feel like I don't talk about TV shows too much on this channel. For a while, when I was watching The Boys and Lovecraft Country, I mean, like 2, 3 years ago, I was talking it on an episode to episode basis. I think nowadays with shows, I'll just watch the whole thing, or at least depending on how many episodes there are, reviewing it like episode 1 through 3 and then 4 through 6, stuff like that. But this TV show that I wanted to talk about, as you've seen already from the title, is Atlanta, which was created by Donald Glover, and I think maybe even his brother. Um, and I basically just watched this a month ago. I'd always heard about it, and I guess in my mind, I thought it was, just another, like, I don't know, The Wire or something. I never really even got into The Wire. I mean, it seemed like it had a good premise. I just, I just, didn't think anything of it. But with this, it's a very interesting thing because, when I had watched Community, I mean, forever ago, like a decade ago, I feel like one of the best parts of that show, if not the best part, was Donald Glover as Troy and his relationship with Abed. And so when he left the show, I was like, I don't really care to watch. Like, Joe McHale is kind of an annoying asshole in like every role he plays, and I just didn't care really for any of the other characters. So realizing that he had a idea and a creation for a new show, I was like, okay, I knew nothing going in. I was like, I want to see what this show is like. And it's really interesting because the show has 4 seasons, but you recognize I said 2016 to 2022. So 6 years. And basically what happened is season 2 ended in 2018. Season 3 did not come out till I think 2022, season 3 and 4. And so there's a 4 year gap between one season and the next, which is a long time. It's kind of crazy for me to think that people had to wait that long because another thing is each episode is 30 minutes. So they kind of have to get everything out of the point real quick. So, A, I would be annoyed if I had to wait each week for this. And B, I would be fucking pissed if I had to wait for the 4 years. But having watched the show in its entirety, the 30-minute time frame as a binge watch helps a ton. You can get so many episodes out of the way. I mean, I basically watched all 4 seasons in a week. And it was so good, in my opinion, that I basically started rewatching episodes because it was so good. I watched this show and it just, I wouldn't say it spoke to me, but I feel like it didn't treat me like I'm stupid and or like a casual TV audience. It really just did its own thing. You followed along, and if you got it, you got it. If you didn't, you didn't. And I can appreciate that the dialogue and storytelling wasn't, a movie or a TV show. It wasn't blatant exposition like, yo, remember 10 years ago when you helped my mom do this? Well, I'll never forget you. It was nothing like that. Things, conversations happen naturally, and there is no like fake, ugh. And it's a show where, okay, you could watch the first season and be like, I don't know, there's 3 more seasons. I don't really care. Like, I kind of care for the rapper, Paperboy, but for Donald Glover's character, Ernest Marks, it's like, eh. And then after that, by season 2, you're like, what is this show? Because you go into the first season, you're like, okay, you're introduced to Donald Glover's character, Ernest Marks. And basically, he's barely scraping it by. He lives with his baby mama and his daughter but the baby mama, they're not together, and he's basically just a mooch. And so he's like trying to figure out like what he wants to do in life. He's, again, barely making it by, and then he starts hearing that his cousin, Alfred, is like an up and coming rapper. So in learning that his cousin is basically this paperboy rapper, he, in my opinion, sees that as like a ticket of like, oh, I can kind of weasel my way into my cousin's life again and try to, make money with my cousin. Because he goes and visits Alfred, and, they have the conversation where Alfred's like, I already know why you're here. And he's like, no, 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 I want to help. And he's like, I haven't seen your ass since my mom died. Which, they make it seem like it's definitely been at least like 3 or 4 years. So it's like, he's like, I know. But then he's kind of like, fine, you can hang around. And the first season is really just kind of like them two. There's Alfred's roommate, Darius, played by Lakeith Stanfield, who's like this very like, I wouldn't say maybe spiritual, very carefree, almost angelic, nice guy, where he truly feels like nothing upsets him, nothing bugs him. But he's always, saying interesting things and is very like, go with the flow kind of guy. And then there's Ernest Marks, his baby mama, Vanessa. It's kind of all about them. And so you're like, okay, it's just kind of this grounded story of like, whatever. And then season 1, ends. You start season 2, and right from the get-go, it's like two teenagers robbing, or maybe they're young adults, robbing like a restaurant for their weed supply that they have hidden. And it's just really crazy. And the season is basically called like Robin season, like Robbin. I'd have to rewatch it, but I don't remember the themes of robbing being real intense. But this season has so many good episodes. And one thing that I can appreciate this show doing is I felt like it can be symbolic. It can have themes. It can have metaphors without hitting you over the head with it. And you really just sit there and go, man, you like the credits are rolling. You sit there and you go, like me and my wife, we would just sit there and talk about what we just watched. Like, well, what do you think it is? Well, here's what I think. Here's how I interpret it. What's your perspective? And it was so nice for a show to really make you do that. Oh man, basically almost every episode. And there's I can't remember which episode it is in season 2, but it's basically like you're watching a fake like late night host. So instead of BET, it's called BAN, the Band Network. And I think it's like Black American Network or something in the show. And so there's fake ads, but when it cuts to the show, it's like a late night host talking to Paperboy, because Alfred, who is Paperboy, thinks that he's getting paid to be on here. And so the guy's interviewing him and interviewing like a college professor about like, trans people and stuff like that in the black community. But the whole episode is filmed like that, like you're watching the TV show, which is completely different from season 1. And the commercials they have, in my opinion, are very stereotyped. It's so stereotypical. But that's the joke. But even in the episode, the host is basically talking to Paperboy and is like, why do you dislike trans people? And he's like, what are you talking about? That's not even what I said. And it's talking about, like, oh, it's basically like what you understand from most like celebrity real-time talk stuff, where they're like, oh, well, you said this thing, which obviously didn't mean it, but we're going to try to cancel you. And so, Paperboy's like, huh? Like, what? And he starts arguing, with the professor, because she's a white lady. And he's like, oh, please enlighten me, how I'm wrong about black culture and everything. And it is like this interesting dynamic of conversation. And then it cuts to this young man this young black man, and it's the whole joke is it's that funny meme, if you've ever seen it, of the black guy where it's like he's by a bus stop and he's like, and he disappears. It's that guy. But the whole thing with him is that he says he's transracial. So he identifies as like a 35-year-old white man named Harrison who's like a software engineer at Coca-Cola, but he's actually just like a jobless like fresh out of high school guy who still lives with his mom. And they interview him stuff. Alfred Paperboy, he's laughing. But then when the professor asks the guy who identifies as a middle-aged white man, like, oh, you get it, you get what we're talking about hateful rhetoric stuff. He's like, yeah, I do. And she's like, so, you agree that, like we're right in saying Paperboy might be like transphobic, whatever. And then immediately the guy turns and is like, I find that immoral, blah, 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 and just starts going off, and they're confused. And it's like the joke of, that guy saying that and this and that. And it's just this strange, like, very strange episode. But then, I can't remember if it's the next episode, but then there's an episode where it's just about Darius. But it's Darius trying to get a piano. He saw a listing for an old antique piano with colored keys. So he was told to go to this like spooky ass mansion out in like some hidden away area in Georgia or Atlanta. And he goes in and he's like, hey, I'm here for the piano. And this figure walks into the light. And it's Donald Glover in whiteface, wearing clearly some facial prosthetics. And he looks scary as hell. And he's also doing this voice where he's like, yes, thank you for coming. My name is Teddy. Like that. And his eyes are like this. He's like this. He's like, nice to meet you. And it's real spooky. And basically, you kind of laugh at first because you're like, what am I watching? But it's taken so seriously where, it gets real tense, real creepy. Darius sees pictures, and the guy, Teddy Perkins, is like, my brother suffered from a skin disease, and we were these famous singers. In my opinion, it felt very Michael Jackson referencey, but not even just that, though, because as the episode goes on, it really delves into things like abuse, parental expectation of their child, children, like validation from their parents. And it really just goes into deep stuff because Teddy Perkins basically is like, my parents, especially my dad, abused me. But he was like, as a kid, I couldn't appreciate the abuse because it made me into, a musician who was rich and famous. And of course, Darius is like, that's wrong. It doesn't matter, like that. He shouldn't have done that. And basically, Teddy Perkins basically believes that, like, he's gonna sacrifice Darius. I can't really remember for what reason, but he's batshit crazy. And he had lured people basically with that piano ad to get them to come in so he could kill them. But that's just another thing the show does so well, which is it seems funny or wacky at first, and then it just really hits you with, like, it's actually not funny. It's, or wacky. It's truly depressing, and the messaging and stuff is so intense. Like, that is definitely one of my favorite episodes. It just was so well acted, so well shot. That's another, before I start talking about the episodes again, the cinematography, I can't remember the guy's full name. I think it's like Hiro Shirai. Amazing. I think he also directed This Is America, the music video for Donald Glover. This guy knows what he's doing. This guy knows the perfect shot for every scene. Every scene is filmed either really creepy or just perfect. Just different enough where you notice it and you go, wow, that's filmed really nice. The guy needs to direct a horror movie. If he hasn't already, he needs to, because a lot of the episodes in this show feel like a damn horror movie. But going back to season 2, there is an episode called The Woods, which is Paperboy focused. And basically it starts, and mind you, for context, before this episode aired, after season 1, but right before season 2, the actor, I believe his name is Tyree Brian Henry, his mother in real life passed away. And it's definitely really intense. There's just like a 50-second little interview commercial he did where, he was like, the only reason he wanted to go into acting was because he wanted to be rich enough to spoil his mom and take care of his mom. And so it was like a devastation to him that when he finally got just enough famous and rich where he was excited to finally be able to take care of his mom, she unfortunately passed away. And it's like, that, that hurts. But the episode is, starts where basically Paperboy's hanging out with this woman, and she's, kind of going off on him that, you got to basically be fake to get rich and make it, and, get brand deals, all this. And he keeps getting annoyed because she's like, you ain't real, you're fake, whatever. Because how could he be still real with like the hood and stuff if he's rich? And so, he's getting real annoyed. And there's even a scene in the episode towards the beginning where he's kind of like half awake, half asleep on this couch, and behind him is actually his mom, just like telling him, oh, clean up, whatever. And he's kind of talking to her, and then you can see like her kind of go off screen, and he kind of fully wakes up, turns around, realizes she's not there. He gets a couple text messages from his friends that's like, hey, you okay? So you get the inkling that it's the anniversary of his mom's death in the show. So after that girl kind of annoys him about being fake and stuff and being the real you, he's like, fuck this, I'm leaving. So he just starts walking. And so he walks onto the street towards these woods, and these 3 teenagers are basically like, we're your fan, hell yeah. And then they try to rob his ass. They try to shoot him. He manages to disarm them, basically, but one of them chases him into the woods with a gun. So he's running around, and then they stop chasing him. So he gets up. He's trying to find his way out of the woods, but then he realizes that there's a homeless man following him, and he's like, hey, stop following me. Stop following me. Like, hey. And, the guy's just being really weird. And, what's odd is he looks at Alfred, the homeless man looks at Alfred and is like, you're just like your mom. And Alfred's like, huh? Wait, what? And, the homeless man starts laughing, keeps following him. And then it gets to night, and they're at sitting on a log, and Alfred's, like, oh, God, like, I give up, I'm tired, blah, blah, blah. And the homeless man is basically like, no, like, you can't stop, because, basically that's like for quitters, like people who don't know their way, you're going to keep going if you want to be alive. And then he's like, freaks out, the homeless guy, and pulls a box cutter on Paperboy and, on Alfred. And Alfred starts crying, but it's subtle enough, where he's just put in this position, and the homeless man is basically like, the only people who have time to stop are dead. And he's like, if you don't keep going, then, he's like, I'm going to kill you. And he's basically just saying, what I took from it is like, you have to keep going no matter what, or you're just going to, end up in this pit, basically. So, he's like, I'm going to give you 30 seconds, and if you don't run away, I'm going to kill you. And so Paperboy's trying to, he's running away, and the homeless man still thinks Alfred is right in front of him, and is like 1, 5, 4, 7, 8, and he's like whatever. But right when he runs away, the street is basically right there. So you could almost take the woods as like another metaphor, symbolism. Like he's like having an adrenaline rush. There's so many ways to interpret that scene, and the best way for me to say is to go watch the episode. But he goes into a gas station, and I mean he looks fucked up, and he's just getting a Gatorade, and this fan, like a teenage boy, walks up and is like, "Hey, Paperboy," and Paperboy's just like, "Come here, we're gonna take a bunch of pictures." And he's not holding back that he looks nasty, he's bleeding, and he's just like, here you go. And the episode ends. And it's just one of those episodes that, because, of his real life tragedy, and even in the show, I felt like the episode was so good about its themes, its interpretations, everything, and his acting is so good. You will come to realize when watching the show, your favorite characters are probably going to be Alfred, which is Paperboy, and Darius. I couldn't stand Donald Glover's character Ern at all. I hated his character. But another episode going into, again, the idea of like wacky funny, and then it actually was a serious topic, is an episode, I believe, in season 2 called FUBU, which is about Ernest, when he was a kid. Basically, his mom buys him a shirt, which is supposed to be, I guess, some soccer shirt, jersey, of someone with the last name FUBU. And he comes to school, he's like, fuck yeah, I'm ready to show it off. But then he realizes another kid in class has the same shirt, FUBU, but it looks slightly altered. So now everyone at school starts bullying both of them because they're trying to figure out which one's fake, but they don't know. Because nobody knows what the real one is. So they keep bullying both kids, Ern and the other kid. Like, your shit's fake, your shit's fake. If we find out who has the fake one, like, oh my God, they're going to get relentlessly bullied. And so, the episode's going, and you're kind of like, oh yeah, dumb high school kid, like middle school kids bullying, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's just a shirt. But then, I think all of us watching, including myself, can think back to being in middle school, high school, and how fucking stupid people were. When I think back to myself, even, like, if I wore skinny jeans and had long hair, people would call me, gay or whatever, even worse words. And it's like, and it would hurt my feelings, obviously. I mean, I'm like 12 or 13, and it's like, yeah, that hurts my feelings. Or people would constantly bully you, like slap, because you're quiet or you're a goth or whatever, really. I mean, I'm speaking from my personal experience, but like, people would fuck with you for no reason. You're just like, can you go away? Until they get a rise out of you, and then they're like, oh my God, it's a joke, bro. And you're like, if only, I guess you could have the foresight as a teenager to be like, are you good, bro? I'm saying, like, the kid being bullied, even, like, talking to the boy, like, are you good? Like, are you being abused at home? Like, what's going on, bro? Why are you taking that on me? But it has a lot of that themes where I feel like adults watching this show can really relate to, I think, unless you're the bully. But they're all like, they're even like, there's a kid, some like Indonesian or Filipino kid where they're always like, oh yeah, he knows how to spot a fake. And then that kid is like, Ern's shirt is fake, the other kid's is real. But then Alfred comes in and is like, no, this kid doesn't know what he's talking about. Looks at both, because like people trust Alfred's opinion as well as a kid. And he's like, Ern's is the real, that kid's is fake. So then everyone starts relentlessly bullying that kid, and Ern sees that kid being bullied, and he goes to school the next day, and the principal walks in and is like, I'm sorry to tell you guys this, but your fellow student killed himself last night. And they're like, we don't really know why, but they're like, I guess he was being bullied really hard, and at home his parents were getting divorced, and they were having a lot of financial troubles and everything, and the dad had just bought him that shirt. The principal didn't say this. The kid had said this the day before, like his dad bought it for him. So with what the principal's saying, it's basically that kid was having a lot going on at home, and his dad, with everything going on, bought him that FUBU shirt to make him feel better. And the principal was like, never, like, you never know what people are going through at home. You relentlessly like torture and bully them nonstop. And it was like this poor kid was just holding it in, trying to just go to school. And they just like horrendously bullied him. And it just kind of ends like that. And you were like, damn, like with how the episode started, where it seemed like it was just funny and kind of just like, oh, kids bullying. And then it leads to that. And, you can kind of sit there and go like even for myself, I was like, damn, I understood what that bullying was like, but even myself was like, oh, it's just dumb kid stuff. And then, look what happened. And it just kind of takes you aback, honestly. And this is all season 2, There's so much in here where it's like, it really just makes you think. And season 2 basically ends with them traveling to Paperboy's first tour in Europe, where leading up to the end of season 2, Earn basically thinks that Alfred is going to fire him as his manager because he feels like, Paperboy, Alfred keeps asking for like different manager, this and that. But in the end, Alfred is basically just like, every man acts like it's for themselves, or that's how they act. And he's basically like, as long as your mistakes don't become my mistakes, we cool, And so he keeps Earn on. And then you cut to season 3, which I believe became the most Twilight Zone feeling season, because there's a lot of I would say this season also focuses the most on racial issues, especially white community, black community, that stuff. There's a really interesting scene I liked. I think it was one of the first episodes of the season where it's a black man and a white man on a boat in a lake, I think in Atlanta, but it's real dark and like the water looks black, and they have a little lamp and they're just talking. And I can't remember how it gets to this. Oh, they're talking about how there used to be a prominent black town under the lake, but it was destroyed by white people. And I'm pretty sure I've read about this, and it's real. If it's not in Atlanta, it was a real thing where it was a black town, and basically a bunch of angry white people didn't like it. So I can't remember how they did it, but yeah, it basically broke the dam or something, and it flooded the entire town, and, everyone lost their homes, whatever. It was just like, it was awful. I mean, it's fucked up. And they're talking, and basically the white guy, starts going off on a monologue about like what it means to be white, like the meaning of like white beyond just your skin. It's how you act and the culture and this and that. And then the black guy is like getting pulled down by hands, and then it cuts to a kid waking up, which leads into the episode 3 Slaps, which is based off a real story but changed for the show. So basically imagine Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, how that kind of did that for the, Helter Skelter stuff, but for this story. The real story of the episode, 3 Slaps, is extremely sad. Basically, these foster parents, who's these 2 women, took all their foster kids and drove into a lake and killed themselves and those kids because they're that fucked up. And what this episode does is basically change it where the main kid, Laquarius, was able to trick the parents and got the kids out of there safe. And so when they killed themselves by driving off in the lake, they only killed themselves. I found it to be such an interesting episode because it's basically showing you, I would say, the failures of society as a whole, because it cuts to him. He's in the classroom. The teacher's like, we're going to go see Black Panther 2. And he gets excited. So he's dancing on his desk. And then the teacher's like, you're in trouble. Like, you're in trouble immediately. Like, no, even like, I mean, you know, kids are excited to go see Black Panther 2. Damn. And so he gets in trouble. So the mom and grandpa show up, which Laquarius lives with. And the grandpa slaps him 3 times, which I guess is from like a actual video. But the mom, she says 2 things, and one, I was like, I get it. The other, it's like, I understand, but then it is like, oh man, you're like really like scaring your kid. Which one part of the conversation, she's basically saying that white people are out to kill her son. And then the other part of the conversation, she says, you know, you think you're the class clown that everyone loves, that everyone likes, but, you know, when it comes to after high school, after your school, you're all adults, what's going to happen is that they're going to be laughing at you while you're nothing. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I basically get that. And so the teacher, seeing the grandpa having slapped Laquarius, calls CPS. So CPS comes in and is basically like, what the heck? And Laquarius' mom is immediately hostile towards Laquarius and is like, oh, you called CPS on me. And he's like, well, no, why would I do that? And so she basically throws his ass out and is like, go take him to a foster home. I don't give a shit. And, you know, you're like, damn, that's really mean and awful. Like, I mean, maybe he would be better at foster home. I don't know, but it doesn't seem like his mom gives a fuck about him. And then he goes to a foster home, which is these 2 white women who are like really like, I don't know, spiritual, whatever, like hippies. They seem odd. And the CPS agent is basically just like, here you go. Here's, you know, Laquarius. You took care of 4 other kids, so you're fine. Bye. And you start realizing from day one, it's a little weird because, you know, they're like, we don't believe in microplastics and this and that. And so they microwave like a drumstick chicken in the microwave and just give it to him. And they're like, oh my God, you know, why don't you eat it? You should be thankful we're not poisoning you. And then they make all the kids work on crops in the backyard while they relax, and just really creepy vibes. But then I think Laquarius, somebody calls CPS, and CPS is like, okay, something is off because it's a different agent, not the usual agent. So this agent's like, I'm noticing really weird stuff. And then one of the parents is like freaking out and takes the CPS agent somewhere, and you're like, okay, weird. But then it starts leading to like, oh, we're going to go to the Grand Canyon, and it gets really weird, and Laquarius is like, what the hell? And basically it's alluding to the 2 moms had basically been siphoning money from the government for taking care of kids. And were scared that the money was running out, and they were basically just going to abuse these kids. But then they're like, okay, well, we killed the CPS agent lady, so now we have to kill ourselves and the kids, because without us, these kids would be in a world of danger. You know, there was a scene earlier where they're making the kids like at like a farmer's market sell their shit, and the kid runs to a white cop and he's like, hey, you know, I'm being abused, and the white cop's like, oh, you're just being silly, and just shoots him back to his 2 parents. And so, yeah, basically 2 foster parents are going to kill themselves and the kids. But Laquarius is smart enough to escape. But beforehand, you get just a little bit more context where one of the partners is like, we fucked up. We shouldn't have done this. Why were we allowed to get this far? Why didn't anyone stop us? And so, yeah, basically they drive in a lake, but Laquarius and the other kids had gotten out. And to me, because at the very end, Laquarius goes back to his mom and she's just like, look who decided to show up. And he's like, is there food? She's like, yeah, it's in the fridge. And just like doesn't give a shit about him, doesn't hug him, nothing. And at first I was like, please don't tell me they're trying to spin this as, you know, oh, your family's bad, but it could be worse. You could be with the most extreme situation where your foster family tries to murder you. But then I thought about it more, and I thought, okay, I think this is showing that there's a failure on all aspects. That Laquarius has been failed by everybody. At school, all he did was dance on his fucking desk, and his teacher immediately wanted to punish him. Why? Why the automatic punishment that fast? Why not talk to him? Why not something? No, you failed that kid. You punished him immediately. You brought his parents, and so his mom shows up, and his grandpa shows up. What does his grandpa do? Fucking slap him. What does that accomplish? What does his mom do? Tells him that everyone is out to get him and kill him. Tells him that he's going to be a fucking failure, which I kind of get, but it's like, can you not do this in a constructive way? Why the fuck do you have to say it in such a god-awful way? And then the CPS agent fails him because she believes automatically, because it's two white moms that are hippies, that they're safe. So she just drops him off. And then his foster parents, the two white ladies, they failed him. And so he did not fail himself, and he didn't fail his foster family when he saved their lives. And so I just took it as a complete failure of the foster care system, of adults, of everything. He's a child who had to literally like help himself because nobody else would, because of their adult prejudices that I would say some kids in this situation like Laquarius does not see. And so it was just really intense. There's probably my favorite episode of season 3. It might even be my favorite episode of the show, Cancer Attack from season 3. Basically, they're still in Europe, and they're at a concert venue. The concert gets done, but Alfred, Paperboy, is trying to find his phone, and he's like kind of freaking out. He's like, I need that phone. And they're like, why? He's like, I had something on it. And, they're like, well, why don't you have iCloud? He doesn't believe in it because Darius told him, that's how they track you. So he's like, okay. And then they realize that there was like a weird kid running around earlier. And they're like, maybe it was that kid. And they have during season 3, they have like a British, like groupie, like entourage guy who's just there. But he's like really a wild card. And so they think this kid stole the phone, not the groupie, this other kid. And so they find his number and they're trying to talk to him, but then the groupie guy takes the phone and is like, we're going to kill you. Oh, bro, mate, you're going to get mech'd. And just crazy. And they're like, why would you say that? And they're like, please just come in. And basically they find out that this guy, Wiley, is the like stage owner, or like one of the part owners, his nephew, but he hasn't seen him in 15 years. So he's like, my nephew wouldn't have stolen your phone, whatever. So they bring him in, and this actor, I think he's played Harry Potter in like a Broadway musical or something, but basically it just opens up this great interrogation scene for the rest of the show episode, where they're like, we know you have the phone, and he's like, no, I don't. But then he starts saying stuff where it's like, he's like, oh, Alfred, I bet you dream of box top Chevys, and it's hard to love a beautiful rose because the thorns. And then Ern is like, what the fuck is he talking about? And he's like, I dated a girl named Rose who broke my heart, and I dreamed about, wanting a box top Chevy when I was a kid, and that's all the shit I wrote in my phone. And so he's like, okay, this kid is fucking with us. And then again, the kid Wiley is like, I don't have my phone, but can you call this number I've been trying to reach? And then it's Alfred's phone number. So Alfred's like, I'm done. I'm about to beat your ass. And then Wiley's still like, I don't have your phone. And so they keep kind of doing this back and forth, back and forth. But then Alfred is like, I'm going to talk to Wiley alone. And this is where you just get this real good emotional scene. And mind you, again, the Paperboy actor, my God, is he a good actor? I mean, truly, he sells it. Now that I realize his range in Atlanta, having watched Godzilla vs. Kong, I'm like, wow, he truly can play just a completely different character. But he sits down with Wiley, and he basically is like, I'm going to be real with you. I don't like rap music. I do it because it makes money. And he's like, I haven't written a new song in 7 months. I'm burnt out. I don't care. I can't think of anything. He says, but I was singing like a melody, a song, and I sang it into that phone. And he was like, for once, finally, I felt something. Like I found myself again. And it's in that phone. And if I lose that phone, I'll lose like that glimmer of hope that I had by singing that melody. And, Wiley's like, I'm a lot like you, where I dated a girl named Rosie who broke my heart, and my parents moved me to Budapest. And he was like, I was going through a lot, and I heard your Paperboy mixtape. And he was like, I felt nothing. I didn't feel empathy, sympathy. He was like, I just felt the same. Which is basically, what Alfred's saying. Like, he just writes this music, but he feels nothing for it. He's just doing. And so then after Alfred says this stuff about, like, that phone basically means everything to me, because for once I found that hope of who I am, really. And so Wiley is like, I want to sing you a song. And it's this, like, minute 40-second song where he's just singing an acoustic song. And it's so impactful because of what he's saying, the lyrics, and Alfred's reaction. Because at first when he's singing, Alfred, he's very arms crossed, very tense, and he looks really pissed off. But as the song's going, Alfred, you can see very subtly, he's like loosening up. And he doesn't look as angry as more just content and almost relaxed. And Wiley's basically just like, thank you for seeing me, and leaves. And Alfred just also is like, I don't care about the phone anymore. Let's leave. And then you find out that their groupie was the one who actually had the phone. So after the episode ends, it goes, in my opinion, a couple of interpretations, because people, if you look on Reddit, are saying Wiley's a ghost, because Darius is like, throughout the episode, Darius has a map, and he's like, there's hidden rooms. There's been a lot of hauntings here, but then, other things is the literal sense where Wiley is real because so many people see him, but Wiley is basically that physical representation of Alfred that Alfred basically almost truly is, but that he hides behind his Paperboy persona. Wiley is a, skinny, shy, nervous white kid who went through a lot of the same, relationship troubles and stuff as Alfred. Wiley clearly loves singing, and it's, it's like this realization, Alfred, like, this, this is like who I am. Basically, it's like looking into a mirror almost. And that's kind of what the lyrics are, where it's like, either that kid Wiley sang the lyrics that Alfred put, and even the song, or he's saying something similar. But I think the idea is that the groupie actually gave the phone to Wiley to look at and then took it back, but was like, pretend you have it, kind of. Because you just see Alfred's face, like this, like, clarity of like, oh, I'm actually good now. That, like, almost like that is the song he was thinking of, or close. And I just loved it so much. I listened to that song and I rewatched the episode. I love it. This idea of like basically being confronted by yourself, quite literally. It was just so damn good. And there's so many things you can interpret from it, honestly. Even now, people are still trying to figure out the interpretation. So there's this episode, and it's so interesting later in the season because it's black and white, and it's filmed like a 1960s, 1970s, like Twilight Zone episode. And it's basically about this, I would say, light-skinned man, teenage man, who very much, owns his white identity more than his black identity. And so right from the get-go, they're playing a Call of Duty match, and he's calling them some words. And then, he's going to school, but he's basically poor, and he's afraid that he won't be able to go to college that his girlfriend is going to. And then this like black professor, which I think in real life he was a rapper maybe, or a singer. I don't know who he is, but in the show, he's like this rich, famous guy who went to that school. And so he basically declares that he will pay for any student's college if they're black. And so everyone's getting excited, and the main guy is like conflicted because he's like, I think I could get it. But then all of his white friends, are like, this is unfair, XYZ, whatever. And he's like, But then you find out the guy didn't mean students who are black literally. He meant students who could prove that culturally they are black. And so he goes into this gymnasium with a spotlight on him, and it's that guy and two other judges. And they basically start asking him, a lot of questions. Some of them seemed a little stereotypy, but he fails, and they're basically like, you're not black, you're clearly have a white upbringing. And so he gets denied. His girlfriend leaves him because she's like, I know you won't go to the same college as me. So then he freaks out, builds a flamethrower, and is going to go to the school to basically burn it down because that guy who's giving out the tuition bought the school. So as he's about to go and burn the school down, another student walks in, a black student, also with a flamethrower. And what's funny enough, the black student actually has a real legalized flamethrower you can buy, I think from a company from like Texas. And he's like, what are you doing here? He's like, I'm here to burn down the school because that guy told me I'm not black, And then they start getting an argument, the two kids. And so then they start chasing each other with the flamethrowers. So then it becomes like a full-on horror movie where the half white, half black kid is getting chased by the black kid. And then he's about to get killed, and then a cop shoots the black kid, like in the arm or something. And the guy who bought the school, the rich guy, shows up with, the cops and everything. And he's like, dang, you were going to burn down my school and you got shot? He's like, don't worry about it. I'm paying for your hospital bills and your college because that's what, that's like representing our culture. And you're like, what? But then the other kid doesn't get anything and goes to prison. And then it cuts to, I think, like 2 or 3 years later, and it's at like a Best Buy or like a Radio Shack or whatever. And it's the main kid, but now he's like trying to like comb his hair even though he really doesn't have any, and he's like putting on a voice, and his ex-girlfriend is like, what the heck, like, huh, like, who are you? And he like, it's just like a little conversation. Then he turns to the camera and he like does that, and it's just this strange episode. Obviously, like, there's a lot you can take from it. Again, it's like, I'm half Japanese, half white American, so I can only speak on my perspective, really, like my personal experiences from the city I grew up in, the state I grew up in, because just because I'm half Japanese and I was born and partially raised in Japan does not mean that I know what every Japanese kid goes through. I don't know what every Japanese kid in New York goes through. I don't know what every half Asian, half white person goes through in California. My experience where I'm at the time I was there is completely different from even someone in my same shoes 10 years in the future, 10 years before me. So I can only speak of, like my time and place. I grew up in a very small, conservative, religious city, predominantly white, and I would say somewhat hatefully racist, but at the same time, more ignorantly racist. People would say remarks to me where it was like eye rolling, like, you're a kamikaze, whatever, like, or, it's this, like, you're not fully white, blah, 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 like, you're not, just stuff like that. And you see a lot of that in this episode where I can honestly relate, understand that character, because it's like that character is half black, half white, and it's like, the fight of identity and culture and like feeling like you have to pick a side, and it's like, why do people make us pick a side? I can be myself. I can be who I want. I can like Japanese food, Japanese culture, respect where I came from, want to know more, but I can also, I'm an American. I live in America. I've had a lot of Western influence. I love hot dogs, hamburgers. I don't give a shit for sports, but I mean, I like American culture stuff. Like, you know, an episode like this, I kind of get because of like where I come from. And so it was a very uniquely shot episode, but unique on like how the guy was, you have to prove to me that culturally you're black. And it's like, huh, and like they are deciding what makes a person black and this and that, and it was just this interesting topic of discussion, honestly. And it just, you're like, wow, it went from like Twilight episode to this and that, and just very interesting. I'm trying to think of a few more episodes. God, I can't think of any right now. I mean, when it comes to the main character stuff, is season 3, because Van just keeps showing up in Europe, and you're like, bro, don't you have a kid, and like you're broke? But her friends show up, and Van has like a completely different haircut, French accent, and again, you're like, this bitch is annoying. She's just one of the most annoying characters in the show. And she's like, I have a thing with one of the Skarsgård brothers, and I'm dating this guy, and I work in a exclusive restaurant that cooks human hands. And you're like, what? And she's just annoying. But then her friend is like, what is going on with you? Finally, her friend is like, where's your daughter? Where's your baby? And then, she just has like a full-blown meltdown and starts screaming for her daughter, Lottie, her daughter. She's like, where's Lottie? Where's Lottie? She starts freaking the fuck out. And basically, what you find out is that she had like a mental breakdown in her car and tried to kill herself by ramming into oncoming traffic. And then basically just had a full just blackout and had like a dual personality and became this like French, beyond realistic, like fictional book lady. And after she comes out of it, she's just crying. She's just like, I don't know who I am. And she's talking to her friend. She's like, you know who you are, you know what you do, and you're content, like, where you're going. And she's like, I have no idea who I'm supposed to be. I don't know what, like, who. I don't just want to be known as Lottie's mom. I want to be someone, be something. And you are just like, damn, they got me again. Jesus. Like, it hits deep. And it was just crazy. Honestly, it was just crazy. And there's there's an episode with Darius where all it is there's like a bunch of people looting a Target looking store. He's going inside to return his pressure cooker or whatever, but then the clerk runs off with the register money. So he's like, damn. So he's trying to leave, but then this woman, obese white woman on a scooter is like, I won't let you leave, and she's got a knife. So he's like, whatever, and he walks away, and she starts following him. And the whole episode is him being followed by her constantly. And it's really creepy. Like, you hear this, she's just following him everywhere. And he's like, I was there to return it. Why do you keep chasing me? And she's like, I don't believe you. And, at the end of the episode, he's just done with it. So he gives the pressure cooker to one of Van's friends. And it cuts to like a shot of her back. And you can just hear the scooter coming up. And she's like, and it cuts, and you're like, ooh, that's a horror. I mean, it's filmed like a horror movie, but it was so unique. And I don't know, there might be many interpretations of this episode as well. Maybe it's, obviously racism. I would have to look more into it because, I mean, when you break it down, it seemed like it was really just about racism and, the automatic like belief of faulting a black person, whatever. But they did that while making the episode really creepy. But, and I'll end it at this because this was just kind of supposed to be why I like this show. I didn't realize I was going to go so far in depth on so many episodes, but realistically, these episodes are why I love the show so much. It's like the end of the show is basically just them going to some fusion, like black cuisine mixed with, like, I guess Atlanta, the black culture scene food with Japanese like sushi. And so they're going there, but then across the street is a Popeyes. And so they keep saying how they want the Popeyes chicken sandwich and they don't really care for the sushi. And so they're bringing out this food and stuff, and they're like, ew, the sushi's warm, it's room temp. Ew, like, they're making it with their bare hands, gross, gross, gross. And so they're finally like, fuck this, we're leaving, we're going to the Popeyes. But then the owner of the restaurant comes out, and he's like, basically goes on a monologue, and he's like, I trained under my Japanese sushi master for years. And he goes, what's the interesting thing about Japan? The most successful sushi restaurant is under the stairs of some dirty subway station. And there's never a table because it's always sold out. And he was like, what's another interesting thing? In Japan, when they make you sushi authentic, they're using their bare hands. And sushi is not served cold. It is served room temp. He goes, but a black man opens up a sushi shop in Atlanta in an old Blockbuster. And, it's too ghetto for the people. He says, we do it with our bare hands. And it's nasty because I'm a black man. And he goes, but you'll go to Popeyes, where it's owned by like an Italian family or whatever, basically not a black family, but they sell you on the idea that Popeyes is like a black business, black culture. And he was like, you'll go to a company that sells you on the fake idea of black culture, but I am trying to be black culture and change, things and do something unique, but you won't even give me the time of day. And I really liked that conversation because it surpasses just the black culture thing. Really just the idea of, he's right. You see all these damn TikToks where it's like, oh my God, the best ramen restaurant, or I found the nicest ramen people. And it looks like the fucking slums of Japan and some like barely forged wooden shed in the middle of the street by a bunch of garbage. And people will flock there because ooh, weebs love their ramen, I guess. Like, wee woo, like, Japan can do no wrong. But then, if you saw that in America, you would not fucking step foot in there. Like, like, if you went to, that'd be like, I'm using Oklahoma as a reference. That'd be like if you go to, I don't know, some part of the South Side that, like, where all the cars are being sold, like on 39th Street, or I can't remember the street, 29th maybe, or 44th something, and there would just happen to be a ramen stop there. I can tell you right now, it would not be busy. And I would almost be tempted, if I was rich, to try this as an experiment. Um, but it was such a valid point. And in Japan, they're not using gloves when they're making your sushi. I mean, they got like the rice and the meat, and they're like, "Here you go, bud." And so, but you see it here, and you're like, "Ew, that's disgusting." And it's like, interesting, okay. And yeah, like, and the idea of corporate businesses selling you on the idea to get your fucking money, and it surpasses food. Disney selling you on the idea that they're inclusive, diversity, whatever, and then they proceed to censor all their diversity in China and all this other stuff. And it's with these brands where it's trying to sell you to this culture, whatever. And then they're all just owned by an opposite race, culture, whatever. And it's like, what are we doing here? And so it opened up so many conversations. I was sitting there like, wow, okay, you're actually making me think about a lot of things I really didn't think about, because it is true. I was also guilty of being like, ew, that person's making food with their bare hands, disgusting. And then you realize, I mean, but here's the thing for me. I think that'd be fucking disgusting anywhere. I would go to Japan and be like, ew, that's gross. But it's an interesting concept, And like, oh, well, the sushi is served room temperature in Japan. Like, that's how it's supposed to be. You're so used to Sprouts, Whole Foods, and shit where the sushi's in the fucking cooler. You don't understand how it's supposed to be. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, like, that's a great eye opener. And the whole other part of the episode, because the episode is called "It Was All a Dream," or like, was it a dream? And you basically find out that every week Darius does 30-minute sensory deprivation tank sessions, and he basically goes, I know I'm like lucid dreaming if I see a thick Judge Judy. And so at one point he watches the TV, and Judge Judy gets up, and it clearly is a different actress, and she's got a huge ass, but he clearly is still in the tank and starts like tripping balls. And it's really weird. But the one thing about Darius throughout the whole show is he's truly like a good guy and wants to believe in the best of a situation and of everybody. But just a little moment, just a little moment, you get more into him. You get to see, sadly, his sad side is he is still lucid dreaming. But he goes to this apartment, and a man opens the door, and he's like, "Come on in," and he's like, I made some jollof rice, and I'll pack you some. And jollof rice is something Darius brings up often in the show of like his favorite dish, because he's Nigerian. And then he's like looking at a picture, and it's a younger him with that guy, but you see in the background the guy walks off screen into like a room, and then Darius is like, "I miss you," and you realize that whoever this man is, whether it's his brother or something, best friend, is dead. And it was just like a sad scene of this guy who is always so good about being happy and stuff, and you can tell that when he's doing these tank things, it's like he gets to kind of be with the people that he misses. But at the end of the episode, it cuts back to that crew, the main characters, and Darius picks them up in a like pink convertible, and they're like, "Where'd you get this?" He's like, "I stole it." And they're like, "What?" And he's like, "It doesn't matter because I'm lucid dreaming." And they go back to the apartment, and they're like, "This isn't a dream, bro. Like, this is real." And he's like, "Nah, it's a dream." But then, like, the last few seconds is him turning on the TV while everyone else goes outside, and it's Judge Judy. And at first it shows the screen and it's about to show her get up, and then it cuts to Darius, and in the background you can slowly hear police sirens, and then it cuts to like you're the TV looking at Darius's face, and he's seeing her get up, and he does the perfect face where you cannot tell whether he's dreaming or not, because he does kind of like he's looking and he's like a realization where it's like it could be either way. He's realizing it is a dream, or he's realizing it's real and he's fucked. And I was like, oh, that's the end. I didn't know it was the end, so I was like, oh shit. But it just, then it starts to make you think, like, how much of the show was real? How much was in Darius' mind? You're like, oh my god. It got me thinking. So, I think I've talked long enough, but god, seriously, my god. Go watch this show. It is so, so good. I strongly recommend you go watch it. Like, it's so unique and so well thought out. I'm just so glad it's not more of the same bullshit. So, I guess that's going to be it for this video. But again, go watch the show. It's on Hulu, I believe. You will be doing yourself a favor. But until then, I'm going to be out. I'm probably going to watch episode 4 of Rings of Power this week when it comes out. And I'll do episode 1 through 4. And then once 5, 6, 7, 8 comes out, I'll review those 4 in a chunk. So, thank you for watching. I'm out.